Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the regular meeting of the City of Ashland Planning Commission to order.
Recording in progress.
There we go. Now I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Ashland City Council, oh brother, the City of Ashland Planning Commission to order for March 10th, 2026. I will note that our meetings are available on Zoom and RVTV. The public can find information on how to participate in Planning Commission meetings in our public notices, as well as directions on how to find the full meeting materials, applications, and staff reports. I note that we do have 4 of the 7 commissioners present. We have 1 on Zoom. Hi, Russell. And 3 of us here in person, so we do have a quorum. We'll move on to announcements, staff announcements.
Thank you, Chair Werner. Wanted to note that on March 3rd, the City Council had a public hearing for ordinance adoptions. These aren't ordinances that affect Chapter 18, the Land Use Code, but do affect development in some way, and as such wanted to provide an update to the Commission. Namely, Ordinance 3286 was an ordinance that prevents property owners from keeping hazardous or trees that are infested. So that is a modification to our tree removal allowances, that if trees are infested as certified by an arborist, they can be required to be removed by the city as to not impact neighborhood tree canopies. Additionally, the Chapter 18 or 2.29 relating to public art was modified to newly allow opportunities for privately owned murals on private properties to be privately maintained. So that one is, again, doesn't come before you, but is one of interest. I also wanted to note that Ordinance 3288 passed second reading, and that was an ordinance that prohibits the issuance of building permits when code violations are outstanding. So unless the building permit is necessary to rectify the violation that's in place. So those are 3 that have been adopted and completed second reading. 3 others that were approved at first reading include modifying Chapter 6.50 to clarify that marijuana dispensaries need not just be medical marijuana dispensaries, really catching up with changes in state law. Also, an ordinance that provides certain exemptions for heat pumps and mechanical device relating to our noise regulations. And so that is really to stipulate that newly installed heat pumps that meet manufacturer specifications are considered in compliance with the noise regulation. So I wanted to share that with you. And also, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have a consent agenda, approval of the February 24th, 2026 special meeting minutes. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. A second?
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
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 Okay. Okay. 4 to 0 to 1. Okay. They are so approved. Public forum. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to us on an issue that's not on the agenda? Okay, nobody's racing forward, so we'll move on to type 2 public hearing. A type 2 public hearing is held before the Planning Commission, with the Planning Commission making a decision afterwards, and that decision is appealable to the City Council. The application before us is Plating Action PA-T2-2026-00066. It's a request for a concurrent outline and final plan approval for a 4-lot Performance Standards Option PSO subdivision. Additionally, the request before us includes a request for a residential site design review approval and for a tree removal permit to remove a single non-hazardous significant tree.
Maybe.
The area is, the site is the Area 7 of Kestrel Park Phase 3. And applicant is Rogue Planning and Development Services. Property owner is CT Properties LLC. Comprehensive plan designation is North Mountain Plan. Zoning is NM-MF, North Mountain Multifamily. The map is 39-1E-04-AD, and the tax lot is 86. I will now ask commissioners if they've had any ex parte contact and done a site visit. Commissioner Herron is not here. Neither is Commissioner Kincaid. Commissioner Lininger.
No ex parte contact, no site visit.
Commissioner McCracken-Jen.
Neither one.
Commissioner Mar.
No ex parte contact, but I have made a site visit.
Okay. Commissioner Phillips.
No ex parte, and I have had a site visit.
Okay. And I also have not had any ex parte contact, but I did make a site visit. I'm not aware of any challenges for bias, prejudgment, or personal interest. And I will now open the public hearing and turn to staff for a presentation on the application.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Start the slideshow here. So this is for Kestrel Park Phase 3, Area 7.
Excuse me, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. I am Nicholas Schubert, Associate Planner, City of Ashland.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then this is the overall map of the City of Ashland with the site in question. And it is I'm going to repeat a little bit, a request for concurrent outline and final plan approval for a 4-lot performance standards option PSO subdivision, because it is more than 3 lots in North Mountain Zone, and a request for residential site design review approval to construct 3 triplex buildings. The 4th building, a duplex, is not subject to site design review, and the application also includes a request to remove a single non-hazard tree. Comprehensive plan designation is North Mountain Plan, and the zoning specifically is North Mountain Multifamily, NM-MF. Again, here is a site, or basically a map showing the North Mountain site in full. Some background: property was created as Lot 31 of Kestrel Park Phase 2 and was reserved for this final phase of the Kestrel Park subdivision. This final component of the 3rd phase of the Kestrel Park subdivision is the culmination of the entire Kestrel Park subdivision, which began in the year 2018. Property is zoned North Mountain Multifamily and is regulated by the North Mountain Neighborhood Plan, the NMNP for short. The NMNP is codified at an Ashland Municipal Code AMC 18.3.5 and applies to all properties within the North Mountain Neighborhood Plan area, which was adopted by City Ordinance 2800 in April of 1997. Included here is a map of Phase 2 showing Lot 31 in full as it was approved originally. And then this map shows zoning and vicinity map showing the area of the NMMF, the multifamily North Mountain Zone, with the subject area in question, and surrounding it is NMR 1.75 and 1.5, which are single-family residential zones. And then moving on to the proposal, Kestrel Phase 3, Area 7. So this is, again, a 4-lot performance standards option subdivision for residential development. The AMC requires that all applicants involving the creation of 3 or more lots in the NMMP to be processed in accordance with AMC 18.3.9, which is the performance standards option and PSO overlay, which is chapter 18.3.5.040K. Application includes a request for site design review for, like I said before, 3 triplex buildings. And again, the 4th building is not subject to site design review. And it provides a total of 11 dwelling units for all of Area 7. Application also includes a request to remove a single non-hazard tree, which I will discuss later. Again, here is an aerial view of the subject site before it was built up entirely. And again, here is a subdivision map showing Kestrel Park Phase 3 as outlined. And here is, again, project location with Area 7 highlighted right there. And that's in between Nandina Street and Mountain Meadows Drive, Patton Lane. Preliminary plat for Phase 3 of Kestrel subdivision is shown below. As mentioned above, the construction of civil improvements is underway, and the present application only relates to the subdivision of Area 7, which is highlighted in the red dashed line below on that map. A condition of approval number 2 from PAT2 2025-0059, which was Phase 3 final plan. All proposed public improvements, including sidewalks, curbs, gutters, park rows with irrigated street trees and alley shall be installed, including surrounding Area 7 prior to the recording of final plat. And again, here is just an image of those improvements. And then here is the tentative or preliminary plat map of the entire Phase 1, 2, and 3, with Area 7 being the 4 lots down in the bottom right-hand corner. And then moving forward, again, with some of these slides, I'm just going to try to go fairly quick here. Again, if you guys have questions later, we can go back, but I kind of don't want to steal all the thunder of the applicant, so I'm just going to be trying to push through these. So this first one is the site plan showing the Patton Lane level of the buildings, specifically 1 and 2, showing setbacks and the location of said structures. Building 1, Building 1 is the duplex. Building 2 is the first of the 3 triplexes. And again, here is pathway level for the pathway in between all 4 buildings, showing setbacks. And then this one is the Mariposa Court level, showing buildings 3 and 4 specifically, as well as parking above. And then this is a view from the intersection of Nandina and Nandina Street and Patton Lane, as well as a view from South Patton Lane for Building 1, rear view, as well as an aerial view. And again, just to note, the lower level is daylight basement, which is 50% subterranean on the one side. Another view of Building 1. And then Building 2. And again, I'm just going to try to go through these pretty quick here, just so you guys kind of have a brief idea of what you're looking at here. Building 3 from up above, and that's from viewing from the corner of Nandina and Mariposa Court. View from the pathway and the aerial view. Elevations. And then Building 4 as well. And then some other renderings of the proposal, showing from the top of Nandina Streets, looking at specifically buildings 3 and 4. Again, here's a view from Nandina and Patton at the intersection, where you can see all 4 of the buildings. And here's from Lower Patton Lane. And again, another view from Patton Lane from the front. West elevation view from the pathway, and then an aerial view showing cast shadows on the properties as well. And this one just shows the buildings, sidewalks, and then parking, transportation areas between all 4 of the lots, including the lot square footages of lots 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yes.
On the slide you had before, it shows lot 18. Lot 16, sorry, with 3,588 feet for that building. If that's a 3-unit building, why is lot 15 and lot 13, which are also 3-unit buildings, 5,000 square feet?
Just the way that the partition lined up, that lot was quite a bit smaller. That's because the other two lots have a significant section of the parking lot above, which contributes to the overall square footage of the lots.
Okay, so
Of
that's
lot
the
13
lot
and-
square footage, not the building square
Yeah,
footage?
it's the lot square footage, sorry
Okay,
to
okay,
clarify that.
Thanks.
And then again, here is a picture showing the landscape plan for the property itself. And then moving forward, again, as mentioned earlier, there will be tree removal as proposed in Area 7. I threw in the definition as well as a picture. There is the single tree over there in the right-hand corner. Definition of tree, any woody plant having a trunk 6 caliber or larger in diameter at breast height, DBH. If it splits into multiple trunks above ground, but feet, the trunk is measured at its most narrow beneath the split and is considered one tree if 6 inches DBH. Plants commonly planted as shrubs, including limited to English laurel, Leland cypress, arborvitae, poison oak, English holly, and sorry, that's a typo. English holly are not considered a tree. Trees specifically planted and maintained as a hedgerow are not trees. And then here's another picture showing the tree when that was taken earlier last month. And this tree, we actually took it to the Tree Management Advisory Committee. I'm just going to go over a brief snippet of this. So the application includes a request to remove what is described as a multi-stem cherry tree, which is located within the proposed building envelope of the multifamily housing development. And staff had doubts about whether the proposed tree was a regulated tree based on photos and site visits, as I described earlier. Based on the tree's form, it presents more like a shrub rather than a dominant trunk that splits. Tree Management Advisory Committee reviewed the application and also questioned if the proposed tree removal was in fact a regulated tree, while also unanimously recommending approval of the proposed removal. So based on the location of the proposed removal, it meets the criteria of approval as it is located within the building envelope. And staff recommendation for this is we recommend that the Planning Commission approve the application with the 8 conditions recommended as attached. Any extra questions?
And I can just add, the staff report that was distributed at your stations tonight has some changes that were recommended based on comments from commissioners since the packet, primarily just cleaning up the language and the conditions in terms of removing some unnecessary that's at the beginning of each condition, and then clarifying condition language relative to recording of the final plat. So it's clear for each item, not just before final plat, but where plan review has to happen before plat submittal and those sorts of details. I don't think anything substantially changes the nature of those conditions. It's really just more for clarity's sake that they were updated.
Correct.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that explanation. Anybody have any questions? Just go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the site design review portion of the application, and in particular, the solar access standard that we're meant to apply here. There's discussion in the staff report and in the application about a mill pond standard, so-called, as a functional equivalent for the solar access standard A of the code. And so a couple questions on that. It would apply to buildings 2 and 4 of the application, is that correct?
Yeah, because those are the two buildings that have the shadow cast on the buildings to the north above them.
Okay. Has any prior site design review in the North Mountain Neighborhood Plan area since the plan's adoption in 1997 applied this mill pond standard as a functional equivalent to the code standard?
Yes. I think the first phase of Kestrel, as well as the area, I don't remember the name of the phase, but the overlook on the other side of Fair Oaks Drive, overlook also did something equivalent. I think
The Madeline Hill property.
yeah, the idea of a functional equivalent, so Mill Pond or a North Mountain standard aren't in the code anywhere, but the solar ordinance is really looking at how you cast a shadow on a neighboring property based on a fence at natural grade, essentially equidistant between houses. So where you have a situation, I think probably the Mill Pond subdivision had some footprint lots where you're trying to calculate solar and there's no property line to base that fence on because footprint lots on a single common lot have no dividing property line. So the idea of a functional equivalency to figure out that that shadow is actually the relationship between the two buildings rather than a non-existent property line in that case. Or in this case, where instead of having a flat property line with a fence, you have a property line that after grading down the line of the property line is probably 7 to 12 feet.
The natural slope was 15 before that.
Yeah,
so
I think the natural grade where you'd be basing that fence is about 12 feet already above the finished floor of these units. So trying to come up with, again, a functional equivalency that matches the intent of that Class A solar, but dealing with the fact that you have much more grading happening on site, and also you're shadowing a building where the lower level is a basement, or in the case of, I think, those overlook and the early phases of Kestrel, you had subterranean garages. So trying to figure out where that shadow is going to fall relative to the actual building, and the applicants have proposed that height up the wall of the first story, where the ground level is a basement, kind of gets to that idea of a functional equivalency of the shadow that you'd have if you were looking at this on a flat ground versus steep cross slopes and a lot of excavation.
Okay. It's my understanding from the application materials that the buildings themselves have not been finally designed, but that the intent is to cast a shadow up to 5 feet in height on the nearest northerly building.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and we've tried to call it a condition that sort of captures that being carried through with whatever those final designs are.
And it's staff's opinion that the 5-foot height would meet the standard ag.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, actually, it's 5 feet from the base of the window down, and then the rest of it is also in shadow, but the rest of it is also the basement.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so the total shadow cast is 15 feet?
probably varies depending on where you are on that,
Yeah.
on that slope.
Okay. You done? Okay. Susan?
Recognizing that there is no requirement for parking to be provided, it looks as if there is basically one space per unit. Is there on-street parking in adjacent areas? Do you know?
Believe the applicant can clarify it. I believe there is some
Okay.
parking bays that are being created as part of the new street installations. So there is some on-street.
Great, thanks, just curious.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, can I ask one more
Oh,
question?
sure, go
Just,
for it.
just to clarify, the supplemental approval criteria that cite the portion of the code that cites the North Mountain Neighborhood Plan, is that the expectation is that the site design review would meet the neighborhood plan standards, right? Do those standards speak specifically to solar access, or are we to refer back to the general part of the code?
The North Mountain Neighborhood Plan doesn't speak to solar access other than to refer back to
Solar access section.
1848.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Amy Gunter, Road Planning and Development Services. And with me this evening is Kyle Taylor, Tailored Elements and CT Properties. And we're here to present the Kestrel Park Phase 3, Area 7 Performance Standards Subdivision Outline and Final Plan and Site Design Review for, shouldn't say multifamily, it should talk about attached housing, but roughly it's the same criteria. So as staff discussed, this area of the subdivision is part of a larger subdivision application that was approved by the Planning Commission last year. At that time, the Area 7, where the star is, was pulled from the application, and the other portion of the subdivision went through. Those areas of the subdivision are currently under construction, and we're back with a re-proposal of this Area 7. This area is bound by Nandina on the north. Try to get this cursor. And Kyle is not tied to any of these street names or any of the names written on this map. These are City of Ashland names, but this is Nandina. This is Patton to here, and then we've been calling it Patton, and then it switches to Mountain Meadows Drive. We're not exactly sure how all that will shake out, but the city assigns addresses, and we're not tied to anything. Additionally, Mariposa Court is labeled on this public alley. Public alleys are not typically named, so its naming convention just is from these maps, not due to any choice of names. So we'll refer to it as public alley in this application. So the subject property is an roughly 18,000 square foot area, proposed to be divided into 4 lots to allow for proposed duplex development here and then a triplex on each one of these properties. And Commissioner Werner, you can see a little more closely why this lot is so small by comparison to these other 2 lots.
What is that street stub, for want of a better name, between the north lot and the south lot?
Right here?
Yeah.
It's a sanitary sewer access easement that will take the sanitary sewer from these 2 lots down through under those stairs to the line that's down here in Patton.
Okay.
And then this one's an electric utility easement.
Thank you.
Each of the lots is outlined here. This one is, the duplex lot is 2954. The triplex lot, sorry, it's really tiny on here. It's probably really tiny on your screens and in your packets too. We're all getting old. So this is lot 13, 14, 15. Oh, I'm sorry, 13, 14, 15, 16. So this is the duplex lot. It is 2954. This lot and this lot are the 5,036, and then this is the 3,900. In the findings, we go through in a lot greater detail about how density is met. There was a pretty large area of density allocated to this portion of the development, between 23 and 43 units roughly, between 4 and 7. And so these additional 11 units is in excess of the allowed density within the development. Okay, so the proposed subdivision has 2 lots accessed from Patton Lane. These lots have their primary orientation towards Patton Lane and will have access from the public street via the walkways and a public sidewalk. On the civil improvement plans for Patton Lane, there are parking bays that were added, 3 of them along the Patton frontage, and maybe somebody in the audience can speak to Kyle, and I can't remember if there's parking on Nandina, but there's definitely parking being proposed on Patton, and then there are 12 spaces proposed off of Mariposa Court on the uphill side.
The alley.
The alley side, sorry. Where it just says Mariposa really big, I get caught reading words. So these are the buildings. This is the duplex unit facing the Patton Lane view, the back sides, the sides facing the north, the Nandina view, and then the internal view.
Just for clarification, the big gray blob at the bottom of the building is not really a big gray blob. That's actually subterranean. So we're looking at foundation wall is what you're looking at. So if you're curious what that was.
This is the triplex building. They are in bays of 3 in order to address some of the North Mountain design standards. There's different roof patterns and windows and door types. I'll get into greater detail on that as we go along. The other 2 lots are proposed to be accessed from the public alley at the top of the hill. This alley has a 16-foot wide public right-of-way that was dedicated when the subdivision it's part of was created. When the Area 6 and the other areas went through, there was a proposal to add 4 additional feet of public right-of-way from this property to that alley, creating a 20-foot wide public right-of-way. And then the 12 parking spaces are head in off of this overly wide alley, now with more than 24 feet of backup, where 22 feet is required. There are additionally 16 bike parking spaces provided between 2 bike parking structures. There's one down here on the lower level for buildings 1 and 2, and then there's a larger one up here for buildings 3 and 4. And this is a screen trash and recycle enclosure area here.
May I ask another question?
Yes, ma'am.
On that slide, are the parking stalls all full-size, or did you make any of them compact?
There are no compact spaces
Good.
shown on the site plan. They're all full-size.
Good.
This is building 3, the one that would be at the intersection of the alley and Nandina. And then this is the side of the building that faces Nandina. And there are standards that get into discussions of orientation to the public street and that sort of thing. In this area, due to the grade change along the street and essentially having a daylight basement presence on the street, it makes for a challenging interface, and it acts as like a side instead of a front. So there is a window, and then the way the walls undulate back, it was intended to draw the eye towards the door area that is set back from the street. There's a detailed landscape and irrigation plan that provides additional buffering to the street for that building. And then this is that building 4. This one is in the southeast corner of the development, accessed solely from the alley. This is the view from Nandina, the view from Patton. These buildings all have strong street-facing entries, articulated facades consistent with the North Mountain neighborhood standards. The development site slopes substantially from east to west, and to work with the terrain, each building is designed with a daylight basement that steps up the hillside. And this design approach reduces the needs for retaining walls and helps maintain a comfortable pedestrian-oriented building height and massing, and provides a transition between the structures and the natural topography. Much of Ashland has manipulatable hillsides. This area does not. Once they took off the topsoil, that's it. It is hard rock down there. So they are working with an extremely tough terrain to excavate in, and so they couldn't like cut the houses into the hill further or anything like that to try to sink them down lower. This is floor plans. They weren't in your packet. They're just conceptual to essentially show the duplex and the triplex layouts. This is our detailed landscape and irrigation plan. Because of the attached wall housing, we brought in a landscape plan. Originally, this was going to be more like a multifamily and not be divided up lots, so we just went with a community-wide landscape plan that you typically wouldn't get with a 4-lot subdivision, but because of how Kyle's operating it and going to maintain it, we figured it's best to just have a consistent plan for the neighborhood. Additionally, because of the multifamily piece and site review, there are some open space requirements, which staff went through and we go through in the findings. Essentially, there's some private outdoor spaces provided for the units on patios and decks and porches. And then due to the proximity to the Kestrel Park, I don't think that's its actual name, but there's a very large open space within the North Mountain neighborhood. And because of its proximity, we're able to reduce our required on-site open space by half. So we exceed what we're required to have, plus in addition to proximity to the park. So overall, we believe that the proposed building can be shown to comply with the city codes through the imposition of conditions of approval and through the findings, and that it will be a nice addition to the North Mountain Park neighborhood and fill in the last little hole on that side of the street. And to address some of the questions that came up with the solar access or mill pond standard, it probably should just be called the North Mountain Standard because it's been used so frequently in that neighborhood. The Overlook Drive subdivision was 2014 was when that one was approved. Kestrel Phase 1, I couldn't figure out when the surveys were all approved, but it was a number of years ago and that standard was applied. On these lots, I think the big difference is the buildings are pretty much designed. These buildings will be going to construction phase drawings after this, so there won't be changes in those building heights. So the elevations that are in the packets that show less than 2 feet on one building and I think a little under 3 feet on the other building, those should be the final numbers unless there's something crazy in the topography that throws it off. But essentially what's in the packet should be what you see on the ground. And then I addressed the parking. Okay, that concludes my presentation.
Anybody have any questions? No questions? Wow. Oh, Russell, sorry.
Russell.
Thanks, Chair Werner. Ms. Gunter, thank you for the presentation. I remember this coming before the Planning Commission some time ago, and this portion of the development was pulled away from the application to be resubmitted at this time. And I wanted to ask you if the reason for that was because of the neighborhood's concern about the parking and congestion on the streets with this many new residences going in such a small space.
I'll let Kyle speak to that. I wasn't part of the original proposal, I think, until he called me right before the meeting and I said, I recommend you pull that from the application. And that was the end of our discussion until just we started this project. So I'll let him speak to.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for bringing that up. There was actually a number of reasons why that got pulled. And I think obviously hearing from the neighbors was a big part of that. And a little bit of brief history is that when I purchased this property, a lot of the design work had already been done for this project. And we assumed and it appeared incorrectly in this case that things were more dialed in than they were. And as we were approaching the date, I think it was the day before, we looked at some of the items and went, gosh, this just isn't going to work. The topography here is just not going to work the way that these buildings are designed. And then also hearing from our neighbors, many of which are here tonight, that there was some real concern about some of the design. We went, stop, let's back up and redesign that. And that's exactly what we did here. And I believe we've made some good impacts there. We've kind of pulled some of the buildings apart. We've allowed some view shed to go through them, which ironically is kind of causing some of the solar questions that are here. So previously they weren't a concern because the buildings were attached. So now we're trying to, create an open space for some folks or some view shed for some folks and causing some other issues. But, that's the way it goes. And I think we were able to push the buildings back a little bit further to create a little bit wider alley. There is, as noted, we've got about 24 feet of backup space from behind our cars, which is a real concern for the neighbors that live on that alley right there. They take access to their garages there. And, we've got trash and recycle that comes down that alley. How do we handle two-way traffic when it comes through there? So getting that extra space was really a critical path. And that's a lot of the reasons why we made that decision.
Really appreciate the added context for that, just so that everybody's aware where we're at with this application today.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I can't make the slideshow stop, sorry. I have that impact on computers.
And now it's time for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on this issue?
Thank you.
There's another couple out there.
My name is Richard Kinsinger. I'm one of the neighbors that Kyle just referred to that had significant reservations about the plan that he submitted a year and a half ago. And I want to say that the changes that he has made have alleviated essentially all our concerns about the property. Primary change that we're pleased with is that the alley, which we had concerns about in terms of traffic and access to the properties, is now at least 20 feet wide, and he's adding another 4 feet or so. So I think that the access and traffic problems in that alley will be fine.
Thank you very much. Jeff Thompson?
I live at 863 Plum Ridge on the house that, on the corner of the alley where the alley meets Nandina Street. So I'm right behind building number 3. And what I wanted to talk about was the name of the alley. On the plans, they call it Mariposa Court. And I know this has been brought up. I just wanted to reinforce the idea that it's important that that name be taken off of the alley because there is a public street not far from there that is named Mariposa. And it would be very confusing if you kept the name Mariposa on the alley also, and it would, I think, create probably more traffic congestion in the alley. We would like to have the mailing addresses and delivery addresses for the new units be on either Patton Street or Nandina and not be associated with the alley. We prefer to have the alley be named alley number 7 or something rather than have a name. So I spoke to Mr. Severson about this on the phone today, and he suggested that I bring it up.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Would anybody else like to make a presentation to the Planning Commission? Okay, seeing none. Time to close the public hearing? Anybody have any questions? Any further questions for staff or applicant or? Oh, sorry, yes. Applicant's rebuttal? No? Okay. Okay, so I will close the public hearing. And close the record. Commission, we're into deliberations. What are you thinking?
I think it looks great.
I second you, John. The reason why I was asking about the solar access stuff is just because the mill pond standard doesn't exist in code. And so we're being asked to make findings based on something that's, it sounds like it's precedented at this location, particularly since adoption of the North Mountain Neighborhood Plan. In particular, the 2014 approval that Amy mentioned, that satisfies my curiosity about whether precedent exists and whether the commission has authority to go ahead and use that functional equivalent standard. Sounds like we do.
I would just add to the earlier comments that I think that Tailored Elements has done an excellent job bringing, the legacy plan to where it is today, and clearly is much stronger and better fit for the overall lot. So
Okay, do you have anything? Go for it.
I was just waiting to see if Russell was going to pipe in. So I would echo the comments with regard to listening and coming back with a plan that reflects that. It's always gratifying when that happens. This is probably a question for the planning staff. In terms of naming of the alley, those kinds of mechanics, as Ms. Gunter said, that's a city responsibility, correct? So that feedback can be taken in the process of making those decisions. I don't know, I've been here 3
Yeah,
years
you
and I
have a-
haven't heard that kind of question come up before.
You have
so-
a condition about approved addressing, so the applicant will, as they move forward, apply to the city for addresses, and we can work with them to resolve those issues around Mariposa Court and also around where Patton ends and where Mountain Meadows Drive begins.
Okay, and presumably there's a joint community mailbox and where that would be located as well? To the concern
That's actually
about-
the Postal Service. We work with the Postal Service, but they are responsible for approving placement.
So just to follow up on that, just to be clear, we don't have to make any references to the name of the alley in the motion to approve.
I think the condition that you have that says approved addressing to be approved by planning department is sufficient.
Covers that.
Russell, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Werner. I just wanted to add that it's a great day here at the Planning Commission when we hear that the residents in the area had some concerns. The developer heard the concerns, went back to the drawing board, and came back with something that looks like addressed really well a lot of the concerns for those in the neighborhood. And I just wanted to express briefly my gratitude for that.
Okay, then, is there a motion? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Hold on a second.
Commissioner Marr? Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a motion for concurrent outline and final plan approval for a 4-lot PSO subdivision and residential site design review approval, including a request to remove a single non-hazard tree, contingent if necessary upon final plat approval. Is that required?
No,
Oh, okay. So you can strike the last phrase?
and you're recommending approval,
Yeah.
okay, with the conditions as presented by staff?
Yeah, I mean, I can add that,
Yeah.
the 8 conditions as
Yeah.
approved by staff,
Yes, as
Okay.
recommended by staff.
as recommended by staff. Michael, can you make that edit? Okay.
Okay, so your motion is to approve the application for a PSO 4-lot subdivision with residential site design approval and tree removal permit, and recommended 8 conditions by staff.
Perfect.
Is there a second? Okay, it's moved and seconded. Michael, can you do the roll call?
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner McCracken-Judd,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, motion's approved. Thank you very much. Thank you in the audience for being here. And now we'll move on to our next item of business, which is open discussion. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about?
I do.
Okay.
Back in the autumn, we had a study session about the transportation plan revision. And that's something that's
about
been
the
on
what?
the transportation plan revision.
The TSP, yeah, TSP. Okay.
Recall when we met downtown? And that's been on my mind quite a bit. In particular, the piece that we discussed with Kelly Burns about possible evacuation routes. You know, I'm mindful that we're entering another wildfire season with very constrained egress out of town. And the transportation plan is something that I'm eager to take up for the purpose of improving emergency egress. I'm just wondering, about staff's thoughts about when we might pick that up.
Unfortunately, I don't have an estimate for you, as this is a plan that is being funded by the Oregon Department of Transportation. So I know that they have worked with Public Works to develop a contract, and it was probably 3 weeks ago or so that I last heard that the contract had not yet been executed. So part of that is a reliance on ODOT and Public Works to work out all the final details. But I can bring back to the commission an update after speaking with Scott Fleury, our Public Works Director, the status of the TSP and when they're expected to begin that effort. It should be approximately a 1 to 2 year long effort to do the transportation system plan. We had anticipated it would have been initiated by now at the beginning of the year, but alas, we don't have a contract in hand.
Okay. Anybody else?
I do think we wanted to poll about the 24th.
Yeah.
The one other item, not necessarily for open discussion, but under adjournment, it notes the next meeting is March 24th. I wanted to bring that to this commission's attention that at present, we don't have a refined study session to bring forward to you, and it does fall within spring break. So wanted to pose to the commission whether there was interest in canceling the spring break study session. If not, we do have items that we can bring forth to the commission relating to future actions, future legislative actions.
Or we can take the week off. Any comments?
I probably won't be here on the 24th regardless.
Okay, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be here.
Okay, so 2 down.
No, I held up my hand
What does that mean?
first to say, I'm definitely not here.
Okay. Susan will not be here.
I'll be in Europe, so sorry.
Russell, will you be here on the 24th?
I believe I'll be there, but I'm totally fine with taking the week off if we don't have anything lined up.
Okay. Let's make the bet that another commissioner who is not here tonight will be not here also then. So let's take the week off. You're welcome. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
It's moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you
Yes.
very much. That concludes our meeting. Bye, Russell.